Biodiversity. We are Group 6 and we will be presenting biodiversity. Today's agenda is societal issues raised global and local and plan of action.
What is biodiversity? Healthy ecosystem and rich biodiversity are fundamental to life on Earth. As we all know, biodiversity is the variety of life on Earth as well as the communities that they form and their habitats. Next slide. Climate change alters habitats, creating conditions in which species can no longer survive in their current area. So the species must adapt or migrate to areas with more favorable conditions.
Goal 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals, Climate Action, how climate change affects biodiversity. As the Earth's conditions have changed, ecosystems and species either adapted or died off. Most species haven't had time to adapt to climate change. Increasing temperatures and damp, natural disasters growing in frequency are prime examples of how climate change is disrupting the natural balance. Humans are directly harmed because of climate change's negative effect on biodiversity. This includes loss of water sources and damp, a higher rate of difficulty when obtaining certain medicines due to the continued damage to the plants they are made from. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which studies human impact on the environment, states that climate change is likely to become one of the most significant drivers of biodiversity loss by the end of the century. Just like us, plants and damp, animals need the world to be hospitable. If we can do our part to help them, they can help us too. Restoring habitats can remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This will help reduce climate change by removing all the excess carbon stored in the atmosphere. Also, conserving intact ecosystems, such as mangroves, can help reduce the disastrous impacts of climate change such as flooding and damp, storm surges. We can also do our part to fight climate change by burning less fossil fuels by driving less in damp, lowering our intake of processed food. Humans, plants, and damp, animals all must share this world. By working together, we can make sure it will be a safe place to live for generations to come.
Current global societal issues affecting our biodiversity. First is habitat destruction and forest land conversion. Extractive resource industry practices such as clear-cutting trees, drilling for oil and gas, and mining can destroy habitats. These activities can also increase greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that makes the planets warmer. Next. Next is loss of Arctic ice. The rise in temperature may result in severe disruption of biodiversity in polar regions, such as melting of ice caps. Changes in the amount of sea ice can disrupt normal ocean circulation, leading to changes in global climate. Third is pollution. Air pollution causes global warming and depletion of ozone. Land pollution degrades the soil, and water pollution degrades the water sources. All forms of pollution pose a serious threat to biodiversity, but in particular nutrient loading, primarily of nitrogen and phosphorus, which is a major and increasing cause of biodiversity loss and ecosystem dysfunction.
Local societal issues. Number one is deforestation. This is the clearing of forest land that can make space for agriculture, construction, and mining activities, some of which are illegal. This usually cause landslides during the rainy season. In addition, this can cause the weather to become warmer and can cause more air pollution in the atmosphere. Next. dynamite fishing, and coastal erosion, blasting explosive materials onto the water, killing fishes, which can destroy an entire food chain, including the big and small fishes. In addition, this can also destroy coral reefs. In 2016, Low Carbon Monitor calculated that by 2050, the Southeast Asia coral reefs will die by 2050. This destruction can cause the entire ecosystem to become imbalanced. This can cause sea temperature to rise. Next. Waste disposal. According to the WWF Philippines, is one of the most world-leading plastic polluters, which has a negative impact on biodiversity, like loss of habitat through the direct land take, which also takes groundwater and release of greenhouse and other gases to the atmosphere. This can cause a disastrous greenhouse effect because of the carbon-based particles in the air. And lastly, next slide. The climate change. Changes in rainfall patterns and distributions, sea level rise, droughts, extreme heat, and threats to biodiversity and food securities. The intense drought affected 413 farmers in 2016. This also includes the grasslands are more prone to forest fires. The higher sea level rise can affect 13.6 million Filipinos that would need relocation. Next.
Let's talk about you for a minute. When you're faced with a risky decision, how do you decide what to do? Nothing is certain, so often we weigh the potential payoff versus the potential downside. We ask, is it worth the risk? And that generally works well. But what if you know that the potential risk is big, only you're unsure whether it's going to happen or not? Take human-caused climate change, for example. The skeptics say it isn't proven, so we shouldn't risk potential economic harm by taking action. But the activists say if we don't do something about it quick, we risk global catastrophe. How do you weigh the two claims of potential harm when we don't know either for certain? That's where the precautionary principle can help. It takes seriously that nothing is worth risking everything for. If losing means catastrophe, it just isn't worth the risk, whatever the odds. Imagine you stand to win millions, and all you have to do is take a shot at Russian roulette. 5 out of 6 times, you're safe. But here's the hitch. It doesn't really matter how good your odds at winning are when the cost of losing is catastrophic. So would that mean the precautionary principle dictates no more driving? Or using electricity, as we would need to take any action necessary to prevent a possible climate catastrophe caused by the burning of oil and coal? In fact, wouldn't that reasoning argue for taking action against any potential threat? No matter how costly the action or how ridiculous the threat, like giant mutant space hamsters, because it's better to go broke building a fleet of orbiting rodent traps than to even risk the possibility of becoming hamster chow, right? So the precautionary principle seems useless. Actually, no, because the principle only applies when there is plausible danger. And while there may be disagreement on the likelihood of catastrophic climate change, at this point it is undeniably plausible, as evidenced by the official statements to that effect from every major scientific institution on the planet. So at that point, the burden of proof shifts. Rather than the activists needing to prove that climate change is real and dangerous, the skeptics are obliged to prove that it's not. In the meantime, it's only prudent to take bold action to reduce emissions in order to avoid potential catastrophe. If you disagree with this reasoning, please give your arguments in the comments, because together we reach a better understanding. But if you agree, forward this video. Do everything you can to inject this reasoning into the public consciousness. Because catastrophe just isn't worth the risk.
Plan of action. Climate change is indeed real. Climate change must be addressed to the people of how serious the issue is. We believe that everything matters and every action matters as well, no matter how big or small it is, since the influence and action combined can create change, may it be for better or worse. As explained by Pope Francis, the effects of climate change in connection with Laudato Si is that it is a relentless exploitation and destruction of the environment, which blamed empathy. The relentless pursuit of profit, excessive faith in technology, and technological short-sightedness. Laudato Si ambiguously accepts the scientific consensus that changes the climate change are largely human-made or man-made. Plan of action. First is to get people to understand the concept of reality and how climate change has its effect on our society over the years. Second is tree planting in connection with deforestation. With the estimate of 46% of the world's tree has been cleared off for the past 12 years, it is time for us to decrease that rate and increase the preservation of trees. Alongside, this will happen with students planting 1 to 3 trees for a bit better future. This is to ensure our future generation for a sustainable growth. Third is coastal cleanups or water cleanups. Also, helping our fishermen through donations or to clean up as well. Fourth is promoting the use of alternatives such as generating electricity on site using renewable sources and other environmental friendly energy sources. Fifth is decrease pollution by implementing a proper waste disposal activity in the community. And lastly, educate people about the impact of fossil fuels combustion on climate change and inform them about the alternative energy sources such as nuclear power, solar power, ethanol, and wind power. Thank you.